3 weeks after launching Operation Iron Walls, the IDF has expanded its operations in northern Samaria from Jenin to Tulkarem. Jenin has seen heavy fighting. Why is there so much destruction in the capital of terror? What's fueling it? And how do Iran and Hezbollah transfer funds to terror groups in that city? The IDF says that there's still a lot of work to do and will have to operate there during Ramadan. Elsewhere, Egypt and Israel are on a collision course after Egypt moved large tank forces close to the Israeli territory and threatened to cancel the Camp David peace accords. On the northern front, Hezbollah thought it could outsmart Israel and discover the new rules of the game. The IDF struck late last night in Lebanon, hitting an underground tunnel and Hezbollah launchers. This is the 4th strike since the weekend in the area, and according to reports in Lebanon, the IDF is coordinating its strikes with El-Julani's people in Syria. This has led to fears that Hezbollah will involve Lebanon in a confrontation with Syria. However, such a confrontation might already have begun, as reports have surfaced of clashes between Hezbollah forces and troops loyal to the new Syrian regime along the border region. In a related story, Morgan Ortagus, the deputy to the United States President Trump's Middle East envoy, caused a firestorm in Lebanon by wearing a Star of David ring to a meeting with Lebanon's new president over the weekend. And meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns that Iran is days away from enriching uranium for a bomb. This was one of the things he said during an interview with Newsmax over the weekend, and we'll have some more details from that interview. Netanyahu is also coordinating with Trump regarding Israel's position on the second phase of the ceasefire negotiations with Hamas. Phase B of the negotiations are underway in Doha, Qatar, with Israel demanding Hamas cease violations of Phase A. But it might be too late for that, as Hamas has already set up checkpoints inside Gaza to try and profit from the increased flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and under the terms of the ceasefire, no one can stop them. They have the authority to take physical control of roads, and they're taking advantage of it to loot the aid trucks. Against this background, Hamas is publicly celebrating their newfound freedom of action, and the IDF is grimly making preparations for a possible renewal of active hostilities against this terrorist group. However, over all of this is the issue of hostages, and Israel continues to act vigorously to secure their release. Israel is demanding that Hamas leaders be expelled from the Gaza Strip and its military wing be dismantled, along with the release of all remaining hostages. The plan at this point is to try and extend Phase A of the ceasefire, and the Trump administration might be on board with that after President Trump himself expressed shock after seeing the released hostages who were released on Saturday. He's also reported to be angry at the emerging evidence that some of the hostages were severely tortured in captivity. He said that his patience with Hamas is running out, and he's looking for ways to implement the plan to evacuate the Gaza Strip. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 493 of the war with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the armed terrorist Palestinian groups in Judea and Samaria, all of which are taking their orders from Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we begin, I want to invite you to click on the subscribe button so that you never miss an episode of Boots on the Ground. In this report, I also want to give you a chance to be part of something very powerful. Israel is rebuilding after unimaginable destruction. Acres of forests were lost in the fires, but together we can restore what was taken. So stay tuned to find out how you can make a lasting impact and help renew the state of Israel. Last but not least, I want to tell you about our sponsor for today's video, Magen David Adom. The 35,000 volunteers of Magen David Adom are saving lives every day here in Israel. And they need your help because their entire budget comes from donations. I'll tell you more about them later in the report, but first, the news. Almost 3 weeks into the Operation Iron Walls, eyes are on 3 focal points. In ruined Jenin, operational activity continues against terror dens, and in the El Farah refugee camp near Tubas, they were evacuating the population. Footage arriving from there shows IDF forces in a funnel from which residents exit. So far, under the ceasefire deal in the Gaza Strip, hundreds of terrorists have been released, many of them to northern Samaria. This has made it necessary for the IDF to expand its operations in this region. The IDF spokesperson gave an update on Sunday morning, saying that IDF border police and Shin Bet forces began operating overnight in Nur el-Shams. This is the refugee camp near Tulkarem that has become a terror stronghold. In this initial phase, there have already been several shootouts with armed terrorists, leading to the elimination of some and the arrest of others. After forces entered the camps, troops under the command of the Ephraim Brigade commander stationed themselves at various sites in the heart of the camp, beginning to open roads and clear them of explosive devices planted on the ground. This is a tactic that the IDF has come to be very familiar with. But progress in the camp is very slow, given the density and the population present there. Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Sunday morning that IDF forces are expanding today the operation in northern Samaria to the Nur el-Shams refugee camp as well. We are crushing the terror infrastructure in the refugee camps and preventing its return. We will not allow the Iranian axis of evil to establish an eastern terror front that threatens Samaria, the seam line, and the major population centers of Israel. It's important to understand, in practice, this is the expansion of Operation Iron Wall to a 4th area after Jenin, Tulkarem, Tubas in northern Jordan Valley. The Shin Bet, as mentioned, operates alongside the IDF forces in the operation, directing the soldiers to arrest terrorists and thwart attacks. Since the start of the year, there has been extensive Shin Bet activity, having so far thwarted about 150 significant attacks, including 45 bombing attacks. According to security sources, the IDF is expected to remain in northern Samaria for many days, and may even stay into the northern month of Ramadan, which is scheduled to begin at the end of February. This is necessary because of large numbers of terrorists released from prisons in Israel that are returning to these areas and stirring up trouble. Israeli forces are obliged to increase their activity in these areas in order to contain the problems they will cause. But it's not just these freed prisoners who are trying to stir up trouble. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps is also working intensively to create a new front against Israel in this region after losing its terror proxies in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development, and as always, we ask you to help us by sharing our videos on YouTube, following us on social media, and subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. And speaking about helping out, since October 7th, Israel has faced devastating destruction. Thousands of rockets have scarred the land, and over 57,000 acres of forest have been lost. But now, we have an opportunity to restore and rebuild. As we approach Tu B'Shvat, the holiday of planting and renewal, we invite you to take part in a movement of hope and healing. Every tree we are planting represents resilience, faith, and renewal. These trees will rise from the ashes, standing tall as symbols of Israel's strength and determination. Now, it's time for you to take part in this effort. So please go to www.tbn.org/rebuildisrael and make a contribution that will help sow the seeds for a better tomorrow. Your support will directly help replant the land and renew the future of Israel. Because love is stronger than hate, faith is stronger than destruction, and together we will rise again. Thank you. Now, back to the news, and we're shifting our focus to the northern arena. For the fourth time since the weekend began, the IDF attacked Hezbollah targets in Lebanon overnight on Sunday, striking an underground tunnel running under the Syrian border used to smuggle weapons as well as Hezbollah rocket launchers. In addition, other sites were attacked where weapons and launchers were stored, which the army says constituted an immediate threat. The IDF stressed that the targets that were struck represented a violation of the Israel-Lebanon understandings, highlighting the determination to prevent renewed entrenchment and buildup by Hezbollah in the area. Lebanese media noted that there were multiple casualties from these strikes, and military sources estimate that the attack was intended to send a message to Hezbollah and Iran that Israel will continue to act against the organization even after the planned withdrawal from Lebanon next week. However, the IDF says that Hezbollah is trying to challenge the security system and attempting smuggling into Lebanon. Therefore, the IDF has to act forcefully in order to send a signal that this will not be tolerated. And meanwhile, unusually, Israel yesterday took responsibility for an Air Force strike that was carried out in Syria. According to the IDF spokesperson's statement, Israeli Air Force fighter jets under the direction of the Intelligence Directorate and Northern Command struck a weapons warehouse in the Deir Ali area of southern Syria belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization, after the weaponry was intended for carrying out terrorist attacks against IDF forces. These strikes occurred just 9 days before the IDF is scheduled to evacuate and completely withdraw from southern Lebanon on February 18th, in accordance with the ceasefire agreement. Army forces are expected to depart from all points that they held in southern Lebanon, and this is including those with significantly strategic security importance for the lives of northern residents in Israel. Amid the residents' concerns, the IDF promises that they will ensure that the villages that will be rebuilt will no longer serve as a shelter for terror, and that they will stop any attempt to rebuild the Hezbollah positions threatening northern Israel along the border. However, Hezbollah is not giving up on its plans either. Even though they are facing new threats, over the weekend, there was a heavy exchange of fire between Hezbollah fighters and forces loyal to the new regime in Syria, at a border crossing point in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley region. This has led to concerns amongst Lebanese factions that Hezbollah is trying to start another fight with the new regime in Syria, even while Lebanon is just beginning to recover from the war with Israel. It's important to mention that the Syrian forces took 15 Hezbollah gunmen prisoner during the battles last week, leading to negotiations and prisoner exchange with pro-Iran militias operating in Syria. Meanwhile, there are also strikes for which Israel or some other states takes no responsibility. But according to Syrian media outlets, Israel attacked the Khalkhala military airfield in As Sawaida in southern Syria. And further, there were reports of explosions in the vicinity of the airfield, likely from weapons warehouses. And overnight, there was a previous report of a strike on former Assad Army weapons warehouses in the Dara area. In another story related to the northern arena, United States President Donald Trump dispatched his deputy American envoy to Beirut this week. During her meetings with the new Lebanese president Joseph Aoun, she caused some excitement by wearing a ring decorated with a Star of David, refusing to hide her Jewish identity. At a press conference in Beirut, she said that the United States has set clear red lines with Lebanon's government to isolate Hezbollah, adding Lebanon's leaders are committed to ensuring that Hezbollah is in no way part of the government. That era is over. Israel succeeded in defeating Hezbollah, and we congratulate it for that. Despite her words, yesterday, the new government in Lebanon was announced, and the Shiite duo, the Amal movement and Hezbollah, received 5 portfolios in it. But media portals and social media outlets in Lebanon were more interested in talking about Ortagus' ring, which stood out during the visit and the handshakes. Here at TBN Israel, we salute her refusal to hide her Jewishness and send our hopes for a successful diplomatic campaign inside Lebanon. So, keep spreading the truth by sharing our videos on YouTube, follow us on social media, and once again, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Now, I want to tell you about Magen David Adom, Israel's emergency medical team that relies entirely on donations. For the last 15 months, Magen David Adom has been working hard to help those hurt by rocket attacks, terrorism, and everyday emergencies. They provide first aid to all people, regardless of their faith, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and anyone else in need. Whether it's treating injuries or helping a woman give birth, these volunteers are always ready to help, but the work never stops. They need donations to keep going. Medical supplies are used up quickly, and training for future emergencies is constant. So if you want to help their efforts, please donate to SaveLifeIsrael.com. Again, SaveLifeIsrael.com. Your support saves lives. Israel needs Magen David Adom, and they need you. Thank you. Now, let's get back to the news as we switch our focus back to the south as a new security threat has come up. Egypt is moving large numbers of tanks and troops to the Israeli border region. A senior IDF delegation arrived in Cairo last Friday for urgent discussions on security arrangements at the shared border. As reported in the Qatari newspaper El Arabi El Jadid. According to the report, the visit took place against the backdrop of growing tensions between the countries following the war in the Gaza Strip and the situation of Egyptian forces in Area C of the Sinai Peninsula. It was also reported that during the meetings, the sides discussed a series of sensitive security issues, including the future of the Philadelphia corridor and necessary adjustments to the Camp David Accords. Senior Egyptian officials conveyed a firm message to the Israeli delegation that any violation of the agreement on Israel's part would be met with a similar measure on Egypt's part, even at the cost of canceling the agreement. However, the Israeli side raised a series of reservations regarding the placement of Egyptian forces in Area C, defined as a demilitarized zone in the peace agreements. At the same time, the Israeli representatives brought up the need to update the security annexes of the Camp David Accord, claiming that some of the clauses are not suited to the current security reality. Egyptian sources said that Cairo is not in principle opposed to discussing an update to the agreement, but conditions it on choosing the right timing and creating a proper atmosphere so as not to endanger the entire agreement. Here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in this worrisome matter. So please keep spreading the truth, and most importantly, follow us. Subscribe to this channel. Only 45% of our viewers are subscribers. And if you want to help us, we need you to subscribe. So please click the subscribe button and stay tuned to the truth. And now, we'll move on to the Gaza Strip, but this time, in order to understand whether Israel will return to a military maneuver in Gaza, we need a moment to understand what's happening in the global diplomatic arena. United States President Donald Trump stated on Sunday evening that he's committed to purchase the Gaza Strip and own it, and even to give parts of it to other countries in the Middle East in order to rehabilitate it. The president added that we will turn Gaza into a place suitable for future development, and noted that he will act to change the reality in the Strip. Trump also referred to the condition of the hostages who returned on Saturday, Or Levy, Eli Sharabi, and Ohad Ben Ami, and said they looked like Holocaust survivors. I saw healthy people who aged 25 years. I don't know how much patience we have left. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to bring to the cabinet's approval the Israeli demands for the second stage of the hostage deal, which according to assessments in Israel, Hamas is unlikely to accept. Those demands include the removal of Hamas leadership from Gaza, disarmament of the terror organization's military wing, and release of all the hostages. If accepted, all of these are supposed to bring the war to an end from Israel's perspective. The Israeli delegation that traveled to Doha, Qatar's capital, is dealing there solely with Phase A, continuing talks and implementing further phases of the first stage in order to ensure there are no further violations. In Israel, there is great concern that the next batch of hostages to be released this coming Saturday will be in very poor physical condition, just as the hostages released this last Saturday were. On that subject, an Israeli official said last night that in response to Hamas's policy of starving the hostages, Israel is taking countermeasures primarily in the realm of delaying the entry of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. However, the Israeli official emphasized that although the deal will not collapse, Hamas will get what's coming to it later. That's a direct quote, and it tracks with what we're seeing in the preparations that the IDF is making for another round of fighting in the Gaza Strip. Right now, the IDF is once again mobilizing large reserve forces, and it seems that everyone is heading south. We need to keep a close eye on these developments. In the meantime, under the cover of the ceasefire agreement and the IDF's withdrawal, Hamas placed roadblocks in several points on the main roads across the Gaza Strip to stop trucks carrying humanitarian aid and help themselves to what they're carrying. They're also charging taxes on these shipments and bringing in a lot of money by this practice. Because of the ceasefire agreement and the hostages released, no party, including Israel, can stop Hamas from doing this. Since the ceasefire took effect, many more humanitarian aid trucks have entered the Gaza Strip compared to the days of fighting. And until last week, more than 12,000 trucks have been brought in. In addition to this, hours after the IDF withdrew from the Netzarim route on Sunday morning, several dozens Gaza residents were observed within hundreds of meters of the border fence in the Nahal Oz area. Remember that the IDF is supposed to hold a perimeter buffer zone of 700 meters according to the ceasefire agreement. But according to the residents of the surrounding communities, the Gazans were spotted much closer than that to the border fence. In one incident, the IDF fired warning shots resulting in several casualties. And according to reports, this incident occurred around 7:30 in the morning and involved IDF observation drones and other forces. Amidst all of these events, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu returned to Israel on Sunday after his visit to Washington, during which he met with President Trump, who delivered a historic statement in which he proposed transferring the residents of the Gaza Strip to other countries. At the opening of the government meeting on Sunday evening, Netanyahu said, "Thus far, in the war, we have made tremendous achievements. I'm just now returning from a historic visit to Washington with President Donald Trump, with senior members of his administration, with heads of the Senate and Congress. This visit and the conversations we had with the President of the United States contain within them additional tremendous achievements that can secure Israel's security for generations. I'm not exaggerating, these are opportunities for possibilities that I think we did not dream of, or at least not until a few months ago that they didn't seem possible, but they are possible. We have many achievements behind us, but also many challenges ahead of us." President Trump praised all our achievements, foremost amongst them shattering the Iranian axis. He was very impressed by the actions that we carried out. I told him that all this is first and foremost thanks to our heroic soldiers and the sacrifice of the fallen. In addition, the resilience of the people and the determined and informed policy that we led. And meanwhile, President Trump gave an interview with the New York Post news portal over the weekend in which he expressed optimism about a nuclear agreement with Iran, while threatening that if no agreement is reached with the Islamic Republic, Israel will strike in that country. And specifically, he declared in the interview that I'm interested in an agreement with Iran on the nuclear issue. I prefer it over bombing the hell out of them. They do not want to die. Nobody wants to die. If we make the deal, Israel will not bomb them. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue reporting on what's happening, and we ask you to keep praying for the people of Israel. Pray for the hostages who are still held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. May they return home healthy physically and emotionally and mentally. Please pray for all the civilians that are affected by these terrorist organizations in Lebanon, in Syria, in the Gaza Strip, in Judea and Samaria, and in Israel. Pray for our soldiers that are fighting in multiple fronts. May God keep them safe. And keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.